This program is rated PG. It contains themes and scenes which may not be suitable for very young audiences. Parental guidance is advised.
We're working to connect a region of over 600 million bridges between our lands.
Hello, I'm Alma Angeles. Welcome to ASEAN in Focus. Joining me today is Charlene from our EBC Vietnam Bureau. Hello, Charlene.
Hello, Alma. Hello, everyone. This is Charlene Navaja from your EBC Vietnam Bureau, bringing you the latest news in the dynamic ASEAN region.
On today's headlines.
Expect Biden.
With the election of President-elect Joe Biden, the United States is expected to reinvest in the economic security of Asia, particularly in Southeast Asia, according to Bauer Group Asia President and CEO Ernest Bauer.
The ASEAN-US.
National Policy Against COVID-19 Chief Implementer and Vaccine Czar Secretary Carlito Galvez Jr. on Thursday announced the government and the private sectors are set to sign a tripartite agreement for 2 million doses of AstraZeneca's COVID-19 vaccine.
The Secretary General of the Association of Southeast Asian Nations, or ASEAN, Lim Jock Hoi, put the spotlight on the vital role of media and journalists in building public opinion and dispelling misinformation during the coronavirus pandemic.
And after a long week cooking and cleaning in the cramped households of Hong Kong, a group of Filipino domestic helpers are using their Sunday off for an unlikely hobby, cricket, and they're proving rather good at it.
With the election of President-elect Joe Biden, the United States is expected to reinvest in the economic security of Asia, particularly in Southeast Asia. That is according to Bauer Group Asia President and CEO Ernest Bauer. Bauer said the Biden administration is also likely to renew alliances with Asian partners. He meanwhile noted Manila and Washington may experience some issues around human rights, around the drug war in the Philippines, and other issues such as freedom of the press. Take a look.
Expect the Biden administration to reinvest in Asian architecture, and particularly ASEAN-based architecture and structures for economic security and cooperation, such as the East Asia Summit, the ASEAN-US Summit, and related fora, which are not necessarily ASEAN-centric, as like APEC. So more ASEAN centrality, less America first. This is, as Dindo hinted to in his kind opening remarks, I think this is more fitting with the direction that Asia is heading in, and America can be much more constructive with this type of posture. You'll see a return of middle management in U.S. engagement in Asia, and what I mean by that is the U.S. departments and agencies will have assistant and undersecretaries, deputy assistant secretaries, empowered to focus on Asia, including the Philippines and ASEAN. I think you'll see less bottlenecking, a more policy-based approach, more predictable outcomes. Also expect to see a great new U.S. ambassador sent to Manila, along the lines of the traditional highly experienced career officers, or someone who may have left the State Department as a senior officer under the Trump administration, may be called back and is needed back in the ranks of the State Department. Philippines will experience some issues around questions around the human rights issues, around the drug war in the Philippines, and other issues such as freedom of the press. And believe me, I say that as an analyst, and I don't think the Americans can throw a rock in some of those areas right now themselves. We are undergoing massive change here and recognition of inequities in our own society. Witness the Black Lives Matter movement. So, with all due humility, I'm just pointing out some of the things that I think you'll see more in the headlines than you have for the last 4 years. If the Philippines is willing, now or after 2022, the Biden and the U.S. will look for chances to expand investment in security cooperation, economic partnership, and deepening our strong ties across sectors. That would include preservation and the fact that you, Manila, preserved the Visiting Forces Agreement, at least extended it, is a strong and critical move for presenting options and flexibility for discussions under the Biden administration. I'd expect continuity and more careful diplomacy on the South China Sea. That doesn't mean a diminishment of U.S. commitments to the Philippines' free access or standing up to Chinese, what is seen in Washington by many as Chinese coercion in the South China Sea, but it will be strength with diplomacy rather than just strength and blunt words.
Leaders of the 21 member economies of the Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation, or APEC, issued the Kuala Lumpur Declaration after the first ever virtual APEC Economic Leaders meeting on Friday. The 27th Economic Leaders meeting was chaired by Malaysian Prime Minister Muhyiddin Yassin. Convening for the first time since their last meeting in Papua New Guinea in 2018, the leaders agreed to the joint declaration under the 2020 APEC Malaysia theme of optimizing human potential towards a resilient future of shared prosperity, pivot, prioritize, and progress, according to a written statement received on Saturday.
During the meeting, as you know, the APEC economic leaders have exchanged views on the current state of the global economy and, of course, initiatives by APEC economies in combating the health crisis. They also discussed matters related to regional issues, including APEC economies' responses in mitigating the health and the economic impact of the COVID-19. Of course, during the meeting, all the APEC leaders reaffirmed their concerns pertaining to the impact of COVID-19 on developing economies, with strong emphasis placed to protect people's well-being and at the same time keeping economic activities moving so that people's lives and, of course, livelihoods can be safeguarded. Despite the challenges due to the pandemic, this has not deterred leaders from securing consensus of the participating economies to move beyond 2020. I think this is important. Strong focus on realizing the fundamental social economic goals that was first charted out in Bogor 26 years ago. APEC's work this year has been focusing on the importance of economic recovery post-COVID-19 pandemic. And of course, equally important is to accelerate work towards developing the COVID-19 vaccine and making it a global public good, and that is available, affordable to all, and that is multilateralizing the vaccine.
Under the Kuala Lumpur Declaration, the economic leaders of APEC have committed to remain united in their determination to help the Asia-Pacific region successfully recover from the coronavirus disease pandemic and its economic impact. APEC leaders have also committed to protecting people's lives in the region and safeguarding their health. They have so affirmed their resolution to further help the region navigate recovery by taking the path of strong, balanced, inclusive, sustainable, innovative, and secure economic growth.
National Policy Against COVID-19 Chief Implementer and Vaccine Czar Secretary Carlito Galvez announced the government and the private sectors are going to sign a tripartite agreement for 2 million doses of AstraZeneca's COVID-19 vaccine. In a virtual palace briefing, Secretary Galvez said the deal is set to be signed Friday, allowing the country to buy the COVID-19 vaccine developed in the United Kingdom. He also said the government is continuing to negotiate with other pharmaceutical companies to acquire equitable access to the vaccine. Take a look.
Masaya po kaming balita sa inyo na nagbunga po ang mga pag-uusap na ito at this coming sa Friday, pipirma po tayo ng tripartite agreement kung saan tayo po ay makakabili ng 2 milyong doses ng bakuna mula sa AstraZeneca ng United Kingdom. Kasama po natin ang mga pribadong sektor na nag-donate po nito. So nananawagan po kami sa taong bayan na ugaliin pa rin ang pagsunod sa minimum health standard kagaya ng paghugas ng kamay, pagsuot ng face mask kahit na nandito na po ang bakuna.
Pwede bang i-replicate natin itong tripartite agreement pagdating sa ibang bakuna rin?
Hindi po, yan po ay pagka-once na nagkaroon po ng aggressive negotiation din ang ibang mga companies. Ang maganda po kasi dito, ang embahada ng UK at saka yung AstraZeneca, considering that maganda po ang kanilang layunin na maging equitable ang access ng vaccine at non-profit po ang kanilang negotiation. So kung may gano'n na makikita rin po tayo na ibababa nila ang presyo para at least magkaroon ng maximum access gawin po natin.
Malaysia's embattled Prime Minister survived a crucial test Thursday when MPs voted in favor of his budget, a much-needed boost for his crisis-racked 9-month-old government. Muhyiddin Yassin's administration would almost certainly have collapsed, prompting general elections if lawmakers failed to back the budget in parliament. He took power without a vote when a ruling coalition headed by Mahathir Mohamad fell apart and bitter infighting. But his government has been accused of lacking legitimacy and highly unstable. The 2021 spending plan, which focuses on fighting the coronavirus pandemic, was passed by voice vote, so it was not clear how many of the country's 222 MPs backed it. At 322.5 billion ringgit, or that's $79 billion, it is the country's biggest ever budget. While Muhyiddin's government has only a wafer-thin majority in parliament, lawmakers are keen to avoid forcing a general election as the country battles COVID-19.
Outgoing Korean Ambassador Han Dong-man turned over to Foreign Affairs Secretary Teodoro Locsin Jr. a batch of Korean in-kind donations to the Philippines consisting of 17,664 COVID-19 diagnostic kits, 1 set of PCR and DNA extraction equipment, and 300 sets of personal protective equipment or PPE with an aggregate value of $500,000 US. The donation was in line with the $5 million pledge of assistance by Korea to the 10 ASEAN member states funded under the ASEAN ROC Assistance Fund. National Task Force for COVID-19 spokesperson Major General Restituto Padilla, Department of Health Undersecretary Carolina Vidal Taino, Foreign Affairs Assistant Secretary for ASEAN Affairs Juniver Mahilum West, Office of Civil Defense Assistant Secretary Hernando Caraig Jr., and Foreign Affairs Executive Director for Asian and Pacific Affairs Josel Ignacio witnessed the turnover. In addition to the Korean government's donation, the United Korean Community Association also turned over a donation of 150,000 pesos in cash and $2,000 US in medical kits to the International Bazaar Foundation. Madam Maria Lourdes Locsin, as IBF spokesperson or chairperson, joined in receiving the donation.
Indonesia's fisheries minister was arrested Wednesday in a sweeping bust over allegations of graft linked to exporting baby lobsters, the anti-corruption agency said. Edhi Prabowo was nabbed early Wednesday along his lawmaker wife, Iis Rusita Dewi, at Jakarta's International Airport as they returned from a trip to the United States. The couple were among 17 people arrested on allegations that they took bribes for issuing permits to export the crustaceans, investigators said. This year, Prabowo gave a green light to restarting baby lobsters exports, a practice banned under his predecessor due to sustainability concerns. Prabowo is the highest-ranking official to be arrested in a corruption case during President Joko Widodo's second term. Corruption remains widespread in the Southeast Asian nation, and its parliament is seen as one of the most graft-riddled institutions. In June, Indonesia's former sports minister was jailed for 7 years after being guilty of taking some $800,000 in bribes. Widodo pledged to tackle corruption as he kicked off a second term last year.
Staying in Indonesia, a man collapsed as he was flogged nearly 150 times Thursday for raping a child in conservative Aceh province, where public whipping is a common punishment for violating Islamic law. The 19-year-old grimaced and cried out as a masked Sharia officer lashed his back with a rattan stick in the town of Idi. He pleaded for the punishment to stop and was briefly treated by doctors before the flogging restarted. The man was arrested earlier this year on charges that he molested and raped the victim, whose age was not revealed. He was sentenced to 146 lashes, a particularly high number reserved for the most serious crimes. Aceh, on the western tip of Sumatra, is the only region in Muslim-majority Indonesia to impose Islamic law under an autonomy deal with the central government that ended a long-running separatist insurgency. Aceh's public whippings, widely criticized by rights groups, can attract hundreds of spectators, but crowds have dwindled in the midst of the coronavirus pandemic. The province allows whipping for a range of charges, and that includes gambling, adultery, drinking alcohol, and having gay or premarital sex. It has wide support among Aceh's mostly Muslim population.
DOST Philippines Secretary Fortunato de la Peña said Pag-asa has installed 17 Doppler radar networks with 3 ongoing installations, 26 high-frequency Doppler radars with an additional 15 in 2022, 28 stations of lightning detection system, 5 automatic weather observation systems with an additional 2 to be completed this month, and 10 upper air station networks to boost the country's disaster preparedness.
Naman ang mga nag-improvement na ng DOST sa Pag-asa ng kanyang mga services. Ito ay makikita sa record ng Pag-asa ngayon na ang ating forecast track error, okay, sa bagyo ay nasa level na 141 kilometers noong 2014 at yan ay bumaba na sa 56 kilometers as of November 2020. For example, sa Typhoon Rolly, ang error ay nasa 41.1 kilometers at sa Typhoon Ulysses naman ay 38 kilometers lang. Kung ihahambing po ito doon sa sinasabi ng World Meteorological Organization na 120 kilometers forecast error ay okay pa. Now, the quantitative rainfall forecast can be provided now using the Weather Research and Forecasting Model na pinapatakbo ng Pag-asa. At ito ay pwedeng magbigay ng abiso 3 days or even 6 days ahead. Pero siyempre, mentras mahaba yung forecast period, ay mas mataas ang uncertainty doon sa forecast. Okay? And then, of course, nakapagbibigay na tayo ng flood forecasting and warning services doon sa binanggit ko na 14 na major river basins and dams. Ano naman ang mga bagong mga ekipahe ng Pag-asa during the past several years? Nagkaroon tayo ng batas, ang tawag dyan ay Pag-asa Modernization Act, at may kasama yan na suporta sa pondo para mag-acquire ng mga bagong equipment. So during these recent years, ang Pag-asa ay very significant po ang improvement in weather monitoring and forecasting capabilities dahil na rin sa pagkaka-acquire ng mga state-of-the-art instruments katulad ng mga radar, satellite at iba pang weather facilities. So halimbawa po sa Doppler Radar Network, meron na tayong 17 existing at meron pa 3 ongoing na i-install. At yun naman tinatawag na high-frequency Doppler Radar, ito yung inilalagay sa mga coastline, ay 26 na ang naka-install at meron pang madadagdag na 22 in 2022. Meron na rin tayong mga lightning detection systems na kung saan meron tayong 28 stations, automatic weather observation systems, meron 5 existing at 2 pa ang mako-complete darating na ngayong buwan na to. At meron tayong upper air station network na 10 ang estasyon na meron na tayo. Ano?
In Cambodia, a mass trial of more than 120 opposition figures kicked off in Phnom Penh. Amid UN concerns, the proceedings were politically motivated and violated due process. The case is linked to attempts by exiled opposition figurehead Sam Rainsy to return to Cambodia last year from France, where he has lived since 2015 to avoid jail for convictions that he says are bogus. Nay Leek, 29 years old, an opposition political activist who faces charges over posting messages supportive of Rainsie's return, said she was innocent. Let's listen into some reactions.
And I've been forced into this political theater. The scene is a courtroom, but everyone knows that this is not a legitimate courtroom or a legitimate trial. It's a sham. It's a sham trial. It's a political theater. It's a political circus.
After 2 hours, the judge split the case in two following lawyers' requests for more time to prepare. Some defendants sought permission to choose their own legal representation rather than use ones appointed by the court. Hearings are expected to resume in January and March. Prime Minister Hun Sen is one of the world's longest-serving leaders, maintaining a 35-year grip on power with methods that include jailing political opponents and activists. Many of the accused in Thursday's trial have connections to Rainsie's Cambodia National Rescue Party, which a court dissolved in November of 2017, while others are human rights activists. Many defendants have fled the country fearing arrest.
President Rodrigo Duterte has appointed former President Gloria Macapagal Arroyo as presidential advisor on Clark programs and projects. Duterte's former aide, Senator Christopher Lawrence Bongo, confirmed Arroyo's appointment to reporters on Thursday. The Clark Freeport Zone is located in Pampanga, Arroyo's home province. After her 10-year term as president, she served as Pampanga's 2nd District Representative from 2010 to 2019. In October 2017, Arroyo took oath as a member of the Partido Demokratiko Pilipino, Lakas ng Bayan, or PDP Laban, the political party chaired by Duterte. She previously acknowledged that Duterte has asked her for advice on various matters in his presidency. Malacanang has yet to release Arroyo's appointment papers. In a separate statement, presidential spokesperson Harry Roque said Arroyo would receive a compensation rate of 1 per annum. Roque also wished Arroyo well in her undertaking.
saya, saya. Okay, saya, saya.
Yes, yes! Uwi na ang babes ko!
Upa! Sumukantahan ko pa yan eh. Happy birthday, happy birthday.
Happy birthday, happy birthday.
Happy birthday sa'yo, Cardi.
Happy birthday sa'yo.
Tayong lahat. Saya, saya.
Impormasyong mahalaga sa taong bayan. Patas na pagbabalita. Papakinggan ang magkabilang panig. Lilinawin ang mga issue at kaagad na ihahatid ng objektibo. Mata ng Agila. Tumadagit ng pinakasariwang pangyayari, hindi lamang sa loob ng bansa, kundi sa iba't ibang panig ng daigdig. Mula sa Eagle News Teams at sa tulong ng makabagong teknolohiya, tiyak na makakalap kaagad ang katotohanan. Para sa mas matalas, malinaw at malalimang pagbabalita. Ito ang mas pinatalas na Mata ng Agila. Inihahatid ng veteranong broadcast journalist na si Eli Saludar. Kasama si Binibining Pilipinas Intercontinental 2019, Emma Tiglao. At pinangungunahan ng batikang mamamahayag ng bansa, Vic De Leon Lima. Mata ng Agila, Lunes hanggang Biyernes, alas 6 hanggang alas 8 ng gabi, dito sa Net 25.
The Philippines called for the strengthening of a normative framework under the Anti-Personal Mine Ban Convention, or APMBC, to address the continued use of mines by armed non-state actors. Signed in 1997, the APMBC, otherwise known as the Mine Ban Treaty, prohibits the use of landmines due to their destructive and indiscriminate effects on civilians and communities. Its state parties meet every year to discuss the treaty's promotion and implementation, and the Philippines ratified the treaty in 2000, 2 years after the Armed Forces of the Philippines completed the destruction of its landmine stockpile. And at the 18th meeting of the states parties held virtually from Geneva on November 19, Philippine delegate Jonel John S. Domingo said the country remains fully committed to the APMBC and its vision of a mine-free world by 2025.
During the review conference in Oslo last year, the Philippines renewed our commitment to the convention and to the implementation of its Oslo Action Plan towards a mine-free world by 2025. The Philippines remains firm in its adherence to the principles of international humanitarian law in general and of the convention in particular, even as it addresses threats from armed non-state actors that continue to indiscriminately use weapons in violations of these principles. It is known to the international community that the New People's Army has continued to use weapons that cause superfluous injuries in its terroristic activities. Its use of improvised explosive devices with anti-personnel characteristics is well documented, including those with anti-handling devices that trigger explosions upon attempt by explosive ordnance disposal teams to defuse them. These devices are intended against first responders and are therefore victim-activated, a clear violation of the principles of this convention. In addressing these threats, the Philippines has pursued an inclusive whole-of-society approach that brings together state security forces and agencies, civil society groups, including the Philippine Campaign to Ban Landmines, and grassroots communities. In several instances, cooperation among communities and authorities have led to successful operations against these destructive weapons. The Philippines supports the strengthening of a normative framework against the use of mines by armed non-state actors, including terrorist groups such as the New People's Army. The Philippines supports global initiatives to address the social and development challenges posed by mines, including through robust international cooperation and assistance under this convention. The Philippines actively participates in regional efforts through its engagement with the ASEAN Regional Mine Action Center and the ASEAN Defense Ministers Meeting Plus Experts Working Group on Humanitarian Mine Action. In September, the Philippines participated in RMAC's online regional training on quality management in mine action, which enhanced regional quality management processes on mine action. In its international engagements, the Philippines consistently stresses the importance of strong national ownership of mine action, including reducing the affected states' reliance on foreign technical expertise. Equally important for the Philippines is the centrality of mine victims in the Convention's work on clearance and risk education. The balanced participation of women and men and all stakeholders is crucial in this regard. The Philippines will continue to constructively participate in furthering the aims of and implementing this convention.
Secretary General of the Association of Southeast Asian Nations, or ASEAN, Lim Jock Hoi, put the spotlight on the vital role of media and journalists in building public opinion and dispelling misinformation during the coronavirus disease 2019 pandemic. Hoi said this pandemic has demonstrated more than ever the important role that journalists and editors play in exercising responsible journalism by eradicating misinformation that may cause confusion and panic in society. The Secretary General made the statement in his opening speech at the ASEAN Media Forum held virtually on Tuesday. Hoi gave due importance to the role of media and journalists in furnishing information and edifying the ASEAN community in the midst of robust information during the COVID-19 pandemic. Hoi further affirmed that the role of the media as a driver of change is crucial in realizing the ASEAN integration and community building agenda. Hoi said the COVID-19 pandemic had emerged as the most detrimental challenge to the ASEAN since the Asian financial crisis.
The first consultative workshop on the development of the Consolidated Strategy on the Fourth Industrial Revolution, or 4IR, for ASEAN took place on November 25 via video conference. About 200 representatives of 45 ASEAN sectoral bodies across the ASEAN community pillars attended the workshop. In his welcoming remarks, Australian Ambassador to ASEAN, Will Nankervis, highlighted how the COVID-19 pandemic has accelerated digital transformation in the region. Meanwhile, in his opening remarks, Deputy Secretary General for ASEAN Economic Community, Dr. Aladin Rillo, stated that ASEAN needs to focus its resources and efforts on initiatives that can effectively contribute to the foundation of a sound and sustainable digital economy, leaving no one behind. Officials discussed the outline of the consolidated strategy, the key dimensions of digital reality and transformation globally and in the region, and their implications to ASEAN. This workshop is part of the consultations that ASEAN is organizing towards the development of the consolidated strategy on the 4IR. The strategy will be completed as one of ASEAN priorities next year and is expected to contribute to the region's recovery efforts and its overall long-term resilience.
The United Nations, or UN, General Assembly on Monday adopted the ASEAN UN Cooperation Resolution with the backing of 110 countries, the highest number of co-sponsors for the resolution since it was first introduced in 2002. As the Association of Southeast Asian Nations, or ASEAN Chair 2020, Vietnam represented the group in drafting and negotiating for the resolution. Compared to the 2018 version, the 2020 version updated outstanding cooperation outcomes between the UN and the ASEAN since 2018, including the achievements of the ASEAN UN Plan of Action for 2016 to 2020 and the first ever discussion of the UN Security Council on the role of ASEAN in maintaining international peace and security, and the adoption of the ASEAN UN Plan of Action in 2021 to 2025. The efforts by ASEAN in building the ASEAN community and responding to the coronavirus disease pandemic are also highlighted, along with many cooperation contents between the two sides. Introducing the resolution, Ambassador Dang Dinh Quy, head of the Vietnam mission to the UN, underscored the central role of ASEAN in promoting partnership and cooperation for peace, stability, and development in the region, as well as the ASEAN-UN Comprehensive Partnership. He also highlighted new content of the resolution, which is reviewed every 2 years, and thanked UN member states for supporting the negotiations for the document, as well as their co-sponsorship and adoption of the resolution. The ASEAN-UN Cooperation Resolution seeks to affirm and promote the collaboration between the two sides. This year, the document was negotiated and advocated in the shortest ever time, but received the highest number of supporters.
Meanwhile, the ASEAN Regional Mine Action Center, or RMAC, and the U.S. Department of State, the U.S. Embassy in Phnom Penh, co-organized a regional webinar on protecting ASEAN communities through explosive ordnance risk education, or EORE, implementation amidst the COVID-19 pandemic. The webinar was opened by RMAC's Executive Director, Prom Suwan Praset, who underscored the importance of EORE works done by mine action stakeholders in the region. In his welcome remarks, the U.S. Ambassador to Cambodia, His Excellency Patrick Murphy, highlighted the long-standing U.S. support for landmine and unexploded ordnance clearance with the regional context, announcing that the U.S. will join the Friends of RMAC. Vietnam's ambassador to Cambodia, His Excellency Vu Quang Minh, and current chair of the steering committee of RMAC, mentioned that EORE is part of RMAC's mandate and functions, so continuing to identify and share good practices and lessons learned in the field of mine awareness programs is RMAC's utmost priority. He further added that EORE is an essential practice of educating communities on the dangers posed by explosive ordnance. It also ensures that when the affected communities encounter these dangers, they are able to take the proper precautions to ensure their safety, he said. The webinar featured presentations from National Mine Action Center Authority, Mine Action-related Ministry, and Civil Aviation Civil Society Organization from Philippines, which covered adjustment made in coordinating and/or implementing EORE. At the webinar, authorities and stakeholders shared knowledge, expertise, and experience, including good practices and lessons learned in implementing EORE during the pandemic, while ensuring no harm is done. They also discussed the consequences and challenges in implementing EORE during the pandemic, as well as the solution towards those, and whether integration of EORE and COVID-19 risk education has been in place.
Road transportation has become an economic part of development in ASEAN. ASEAN has recognized the need to identify the key strategic directions for ASEAN member states to reduce the road fatalities by 50% in ASEAN member states by 2020, and to work towards the further decreasing the forecast level of road fatalities in ASEAN by 2030. Let's take a look.
Road transportation has become an essential part of economic and social development in ASEAN. Within a decade, ASEAN has faced a significantly rapid rate of motorization. Under the ASEAN Transport Strategic Plan 2016 to 2025, or also known as Kuala Lumpur Transport Strategic Plan, KLTSP, ASEAN has set a target to reduce the road fatalities by 50% in ASEAN member states by 2020 and work towards further decreasing the forecast level of road fatalities in ASEAN by 2030. In achieving Kuala Lumpur Transport Strategic Plan's target, ASEAN member states have aligned and implemented the road safety initiatives in accordance with the 5 strategic pillars of the United Nations Decade of Action for Road Safety 2011 to 2020, namely Road Safety Management Pillar, Safer Roads and Mobility Pillar, Safer Vehicle Pillar, Safer Road Users Pillar, and Post-Crash Response Pillar. Each ASEAN member state has developed their respective National Action Plan on road safety, and in order to coordinate and supervise its implementation, collaboration among relevant agencies in various sectors has been established and worked well within ASEAN member states. Recognizing that a safe road infrastructure is essential in ensuring the safety of all road users, several measures have been initiated by ASEAN member states through the implementation of road assessment and improved planning, design, construction, and operation of roads. To ensure the vehicle's safety for both passive and active safety, ASEAN member states have developed the vehicle inspection system in accordance with their respective national regulations. In 2011, the Malaysian Institute of Road Safety Research, MAROS, as one of the ASEAN Road Safety Centre, has established the new car assessment programme for Southeast Asia to elevate vehicle safety standards and encourage a market for safer vehicles in the region. ASEAN member states have also implemented measures to improve road users' behaviour through public awareness programmes in their respective countries. These measures are combined with sustained enforcement of law and regulations to increase seatbelt and standard helmet wearing rates, reduce drink driving, speeding, and other risk factors. ASEAN member states recognise the importance of an immediate alert response system to post-crash emergencies and the appropriate emergency treatment for road crash victims, and establish the Trauma Centre and First Aid Response Service to respond to the emergencies which can occur anytime and anywhere. Following the Phnom Penh Ministerial Declaration on ASEAN Road Safety, issued in 2004, ASEAN established the ASEAN Multi-Sector Road Safety Working Group to coordinate the implementation of road safety action plans in national and regional levels. In 2015, the ASEAN Transport Ministers have issued ASEAN Declaration on Road Safety Strategy and adopted the ASEAN Regional Road Safety Strategy, which provides a framework for road safety strategies at the regional level in accordance with the United Nations Decade of Action for Road Safety. Cooperation with ASEAN's dialogue partners and external partners to improve road safety in the region has been well established. With Japan and the European Union, several studies have been completed and several dialogues have been convened to share experiences from both regions in improving road safety. In line with the goals set under the Kuala Lumpur Transport Strategic Plan, ASEAN will continuously put its best effort to improve road safety and to reduce road fatalities in the region. These efforts will ensure a higher level of safety for the road users in the region and to keep ASEAN roads safer. Ultimately, all these actions will lead into the establishment of an efficient, safe, and integrated regional land transportation network within ASEAN and beyond.
Meanwhile, the future ASEAN Agenda for Technical and Vocational Education and Training, or TVET, was published and presented to delegates of ASEAN member states at the 9th Regional Policy Dialogue on TVET in Bangkok back in June of 2019. COVID-19 has accelerated ASEAN's to pivot towards the digital economy, forcing companies to rethink how they operate. Cutting across all sectors, the pandemic has allowed the rare opportunity for companies to also reset. Let's take a look.
The fourth industrial revolution, coronavirus pandemic, and other global events are disrupting the world of work. Is the ASEAN human resource ready for this? The Cisco and Oxford Economics Index study in 2018 projected that 6.6 million jobs in the ASEAN today will no longer be required by 2028 under new technology scenario. Workers will be displaced because of the adoption of new technologies, but this will also create new demands for workers with different skill sets. TVET and lifelong learning are keys to achieving sustainable development with a competitive workforce amidst continuous structural changes in the economy. Reforming TVET governance at the ASEAN level is crucial, and the establishment of the ASEAN TVET Council should provide a platform for cross-sector and cross-pillar discourse for coordinated actions among the key stakeholders in skills development. The ATC should work on strong regional collaborative efforts in TVET, such as reforms in policies, innovations in TVET systems, mobility of workers through mutual recognition of skills and qualifications. The ASEAN TVET Council will facilitate and sustain partnerships and collaborations in TVET at the ASEAN level. With the ASEAN TVET Council in place, we envision an ASEAN workforce who is ready to take advantage of the digital age and succeed above economic restructuring and transformations in the future. The ASEAN TVET Council, working on a future-ready workforce, ensuring an ASEAN community that is resilient and competitive.
Now we are pleased to present to you the ASEAN TVET Council focal points. The ASEAN TVET Council is composed of the senior officials from the National TVET Councils, Ministry of Commerce, Industry or Trade, Ministry of Labor, Ministry of Education, and other relevant ministries from all the ASEAN member states. The Philippines, through the Technical Education and Skills Development Authority or TESDA, holds the inaugural chairmanship of the Council until 2022. The TVET Council is also represented by the business and industry sector and other relevant stakeholders at the regional level through the ASEAN Confederation of Employers, ASEAN Trade Union Council, ASEAN Future Workforce Council, and the Southeast Asian Ministers of Education Organization Secretariat. The ASEAN Secretariat shall provide the necessary technical support for the effective functioning of the Council.
The search for the best continues. Tagisan ng Galing Part 2 is now accepting audition entries. Kung ikaw ay 21 to 59 years old at may angking galing sa pagkanta, mapasolo, duet, trio o banda man, magpadala na ng audition entry. Narito ang mga guidelines. Para makapagpasa ng entry sa singing category, contact Nikki sa 0977-651-9504. Ito na ang pagkakataon mo para maging tagisan ng galing grand winner at manalo ng 2 million pesos. Para sa karagdagang impormasyon, i-like ang Tagisan ng Galing Facebook page. Kaya sali na!
Welcome back to ASEAN in Focus. So Thailand's tourism industry launches Expat Festive 2020. EBC Thailand Bureau's Aaron Blue reports.
are here in the heart of Bangkok, in one of its famous shopping malls, to witness the Expat Festival 2020. This is the second campaign of the Tourism Authority of Thailand to encourage expats to travel in the last month of this year. Discounts in various outdoor activities, local products, hotels and flights are being offered in the said event. It is joined by travel agencies offering packages for expats, especially in the holiday season that is soon approaching. This event is projected to encourage expats to travel in different provinces around Thailand now that the weather is highly favorable. Travel packages for solo travelers and families are on sale even in the first quarter of 2021. These campaigns by Tourism Authority of Thailand is a makeshift for the battered industry caused by the pandemic. International tourists has to undergo a process of obtaining a special visa before entering Thailand, thus affecting tourism sector at large. Various strategies have been done by the Thai government to boost spending and to revive tourism through this kind of campaign, both for expats and for locals, with a reminder to travel safely, always wear masks, and wash your hands frequently. This is Aaron Blue Calleja reporting from Bangkok, Thailand, and we live in interesting times.
Thank you, Aaron. After a long week cooking and cleaning in the cramped households of Hong Kong, a group of Filipino domestic helpers are using their Sunday off for an unlikely hobby, cricket. And they're proving rather good at it. Despite no background in the game, scant coaching and very little time, the SEC Divas have made a startling impact, winning Hong Kong's Development League twice in their first 2 seasons and going unbeaten since stepping up to the main divisions this year. Take a look.
Either you go this way or either you go this way. Depends on the line. When it's offside.
One over ang sinabi.
Either you go this way or either you go this way. Depends on the line. When it's offside.
One over ang sinabi ko, hindi one.
Sama-sama! Tayo! Sama-sama! Tayo! Sama-sama! Tayo!
Monday to Saturday, we are working as domestic helper and we only have day off Sunday. And since we start joining the cricket league in Hong Kong, our training only Sunday 2 hours. That's only our time. Yeah. Next time.
For me, it's very relaxing. It makes my day very worthwhile. So it's good to be active and you forget all the stress and the troubles from everything, and you just focus on what you do that makes you happy.
Good stuff. Well played. Well played.
Yay! Thank you, Charlene, for joining me today. And before we go, I'd like to greet you a very happy birthday on Sunday. Happy birthday, Charlene.
Thank you so much, Alma, and thank you to everyone. So, yeah, I hope you guys enjoy your weekend.
You too.
So, yes. This has been Charlene Navaja reporting from Hanoi, Vietnam. We live in interesting times.
Thank you, Charlene. We'll see you back next week. I'm Alma Angeles. We live in interesting times.